And I think it's the 18th day of the month, meaning just a few more days and the month itself would be over. I recall 30 days had September, April, June, and November. I do recall that. It's been some years, I know. The question now is September the 18th. What have you been doing with yourself? What do you still intend to do with yourself? Please think about it, because the days are going. Last week, we were talking about death, and we were exhorting ourselves to think of what lesson is there for us in death. So, death as a lesson to the living. And that was the key point we were discussing last week as we considered the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. So we thank God we are still alive. But then, 2 weeks ago, we were discussing what Jesus was doing with the people, in which he consciously and deliberately started the use of parables to teach the people. And we looked at the story of the farmer. Well, we will continue that story tonight. But then at this point, I think it is in place to apologize to my Facebook and YouTube followers, because last week the weather was very bad, so that at a point the network went off completely and we couldn't finish recording the program. And tonight I must apologize ahead of time. Actually, I see it is already happening. The network is swinging on and off. But then I must apologize for that. We are still happy that for whatever it is worth, we are still having some network. So maybe we ought to be grateful somewhat. But tonight, the recording may be a bit patchy, because there's very heavy rain, very seriously heavy rain going on in parts of the city, even right now as we are recording the program. That notwithstanding, it is my prayer that it shall please the Lord God Jehovah to be with us, to teach us, to guide us, and to encourage all of us all the more, irrespective of whatever challenges may come our way. Amen. Since this is a live program on radio, Lead City 89.1 FM, sending forth unto you the voice of hope, and I still remain your regular presenter, Reverend Dr. Adebayo Bolajoko. Perhaps somebody has an interest in calling in to contribute, to ask question, please feel free. You can try 0706 956 6844. 0706 956 6844. If that is giving you a challenge, there's an alternate number that you can also try: 0805 094 2988. 0805 094 2988. 2 weeks ago, we read from the book of Matthew, chapter 13, from verse 1. We actually went through up to 15. We saw the story of the farmer who went out to sow. Some fell by the side of the road. The birds came and ate them up. Some fell inside a place where there were thorns, and they struggled to grow. But at a point in time, they got choked up. Some of us, we are familiar with that story, I believe, maybe from when we were in Sunday school. But the problem is, we know the story, but we usually don't have idea what the story truly means. Some seeds fell by the wayside, and immediately birds came up and ate them. Some fell into shallow soil. They germinated, but because they didn't have good roots, they died off shortly after. Some fell inside thorns. They grew up along with the thorns until the thorns killed them off. And then some fell on good soil. And of those that fell on good soil, they produced different degree for harvesting. Some 20s, 30s, 40s, and so on and so forth. And then the disciples of Jesus came to him and said, Master, you deliberately used a parable. Why? Do you realize that these people will not understand the parable? And Jesus said, yes. I am very much aware that most of them will not understand. The question now is, why did Jesus deliberately use a format of teaching, a format that he himself knew the people will find not easy to understand? Why? Was it because he was stupid? Was it because he just didn't care about the people? He couldn't care less if they understood or they didn't. It wasn't his business. So just like the disciples who were present, you too should ask yourself, why? And Jesus answered them, the truth is this: You are already my disciples. You have made a decision to apply yourself to understanding what I am teaching you. So, that is your own advantage. But these other people, many of them, they are following not because they are interested in what I am saying. Their interest is in miracles. And please remember, this teaching using parable follows closely after Jesus was rebuking different sets of people in different cities as to their concentrating on receiving miracles rather than receiving knowledge about God. That is still the same problem facing us today. Many pastors, prophets, evangelists, whatever, name them, they are more concerned about people coming for miracles. Jesus is talking to everyone tonight. He says, look, I am changing the tactic of teaching the people. I will use parables to teach them, because anyone who has ears, let such a person use his ears to listen and to understand. This answer from Jesus is very instructive. The disciples have earned the privilege of understanding spiritual truth. Why did they understand? Why did they earn the privilege? It wasn't just given to them. They earned to whatever progress you can ever make concerning your spiritual journey. If you are one of those who is still very much interested in going to a church because they can sing, they can dance, they can clap for 10 hours and have different dance styles and different genres of music that they play in their churches, that may be good. But the question is it good for the development of your soul? That's what you should ask yourself. Remember, last week when we were looking at death as a lesson to the living, we concluded that Romans chapter 11, that after all, Paul said, it is by faith alone and that grace will come. Okay. Grace. Please listen to me carefully tonight. Grace, the special grace that is required for your spiritual growth, will not be given to you as a free gift that you don't deserve. I hope you heard that and you heard it properly. The special grace that you require to help you in your spiritual growth, your spiritual journey on this earth, will never come to you if you don't deserve it. How do you deserve it? it is your choice. Your willingness to apply yourself, your readiness to study the scriptures, to pray to God for help. That is what will help you to earn the grace. I don't care what any pastor told you before today. That is not my headache. What I care about is you having a better understanding from tonight. The disciples of Jesus had decided, they were willing and they were very ready to apply themselves. So Jesus says, you have earned the privilege. But look at all these people. They have not earned the privilege yet. Why? Because they are not striving. They are not making efforts. According to Jesus, this is to say, understanding spiritual lessons requires effort. Honestly, it requires a lot of effort on your part. And that was why Jesus quoted from the book of Isaiah, chapter 6. He quoted verses 9 and 10, in which Isaiah said, these people, they are so dull, meaning they are very stupid. Yet they think they are so smart. They are not applying themselves to understand God. They expect that God is their servant and God will automatically give everything to them. That is where they are so stupid. Of course, that's my paraphrase of what Isaiah said. Isaiah actually said, the heart of these people has grown dull. My dear listeners, what is the condition of your mind, of your heart tonight? Has it gone dull? Now, a heart that has grown dull indicates a poor spiritual state, poor readiness to learn, to use your ears. That's what it means. So, I'm saying it again. This is another lesson for today's pastors who think that by their many philosophical and psychological speeches, they can make spiritual truths to fill people's heads and thereby automatically make those spiritual truths to become part of their lives without their listeners making personal efforts to get understanding of the things of God. Any pastor who adopts such an approach, it is nothing short of deception or delusion. Think about it. Jesus said, and he repeated it on different occasions, he who has ears, let him hear. This simply means everyone who has the ability to think and apply himself to understanding the truth, such a person must be willing to do so, because it is a matter of choice. you have to make up your mind. This does not mean that one who applies himself to understanding the truth will not encounter some problems, some difficulty. It does not mean that when you are seriously applying yourself to understanding the truth of God, it doesn't mean that you will not stumble along the line. No, it doesn't mean so. Sometimes, the more you are even applying yourself, the more it may appear that you are not understanding. That is the truth. But there is one truth that cuts across all your struggles. Jesus knows all your pains, all your struggles. He knows. As you are making the effort, commensurate grace will begin to flow to you, although you may not be aware of it, if you are faithful in your effort. All the challenges and the apparent difficulties are part of the self-application in faith and patience. Patience will develop from your faith that is growing. And as that is happening, your understanding will gradually expand. That is how it works. So when somebody say you have to go to one mountain for 7 days and go and pray and power of God will come upon you, you better be careful. Many people who have done that in the past just go to one mountain and be praying. It was not the power of God that came upon them. It was something else, although they didn't know. You cannot force the hand of God. You can't. No man can. Now let's continue. But before then, I think let's take a little music interlude.
He's calling out today. Voice of hope is calling out today. You can hear it, harden up your heart. Voice of hope is calling out today. He is calling for you. Now come here's the call. That name Jesus is knocking at your door. You can't hear him, harden up your heart. He's calling on like in the days gone by. You let him in, he'll come into your heart. Can you hear him? Can you hear him? Can you hear him now?
Indeed, all any man can boast of is today, for tomorrow may never come. Jesus says, the Father and I stand at the door of every man's heart, and we knock gently. If any man hears and opens the door, we will come in and dine with him. Dear brethren, going to church does not make you a Christian. Turn your life over to him. You have to grow beyond religion to become more like him. Oh, hear his voice today.
Jesus, he is the Lord of all. At the mention of his name, all heads shall bow, and at the day every knee shall bow. Yes, he gives life to all, life in eternity. Lord Jesus, calling out in love. Jesus is calling. You can hear him, touch your heart.
Oh, yes.
Tomorrow might be late.
Voice of hope is calling, calling to you now. Voice of hope is calling. The voice of hope is calling. Indeed, the voice of hope is calling to somebody tonight. The choice to listen. Remember, Jesus says, "He who has ears, let him hear." It's entirely your choice. No one can force you. No one can cajole you. The choice is yours. Now let's look at Matthew chapter 13 so that we can now see what is the meaning of that parable. Matthew chapter 13 from verse 18. Jesus says, now listen to the parable of the sower. When a man hears the message of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. That is the seed sown by the roadside. And tonight, I make bold to say, most people who claim to be Christians, who go to church today, they fall within this group. Most of them. I'm not hesitating to say so. Most people today are church goers. They hear the word. It is sown inside their heart. But almost as soon as they leave the church, whatever church they go to, almost as soon as they leave, some of them, even before they reach their houses, everything had flown away. Seeds that fell by the wayside, and the birds came and ate them up. So tonight, please evaluate yourself. There are four classes, four groups of people. People who claim to be Christians. There are four groups. Tonight, you must classify yourself by yourself. You must decide where you belong to. And thereafter, you also must decide where you want to be, where you want to end up. Why? Because remember the lesson from death. And the question which asks you to ask yourself, what is my life worth right now as I speak? And the extension of that question is, the day I die, what will my life be worth before God? It's one question, but it is an ongoing question. What is my life worth now? Day by day as I move on, the day I die, what will be the worth of my life before God? Now, the second group of Christians are described as follows: the seed sown on stony soil, stony patches. These are the people who hear the message. They actually accept the message, but this message does not grow in them. The message does not develop strong roots. Maybe they have some adventitious roots. When the wind and the storm of life, the challenges, pain, sorrow come upon these people, where will you find them? They are the ones that will start running from pillar to post, looking for one prophet, looking for one pastor, and some of them will end up with one spiritualist or with one babalawo somewhere. These are the people the Bible is describing. Why is that so? On their own, the message does not have strength. So that's why they are always looking for Father in the Lord. Father in the Lord, Father in the Lord. I'm not saying that is not good. Please don't misunderstand me. That may be okay if that's what you believe. But the question is this: is it good enough? Because some of the so-called Father in the Lord they run to, they don't even know God. So you see, their problems are compounded. No wonder Jeremiah said, "Woe unto the man who places his faith in another man." Woe. Woe simply means problems, pain, sorrow will be multiplied to that man whose faith is centered around a man. His faith is not centered in God, so his sorrows will be multiplied. This group of people, along with the first group, constitute probably about 80% of people who are churchgoers today. Probably, I'm not sure, because I've not done a research to determine that. But by cursory examination, you know that these are mostly the people in church. It is not strange. Even when Jesus was walking the earth, they were there. They constituted the bulk of the people. That's true. Jesus fed 5,000. Jesus fed 4,000. Jesus went from town to town, city to city, doing miracles. Where were all these people the day some people were shouting, "Crucify him, crucify him"? Where were all the people who received the miracles? Where were they? When the chips came tumbling down, their faith failed them, because their faith was centered around miracles. Now, the third group of Christians, inverted comma, begin and close, today, are those ones that Jesus described as they are the seeds that fell among the thorns. The troubles of life, which represent the thorns, will choke them up and destroy them. But then the fourth group, these are the ones that fell on good soil. These are the people who hear the message and they make appropriate effort to understand the message. The quality of their lives will reflect fruits in 20s, in 40s, in 80s, in hundreds. That is what the quality of their lives will reflect, according to Jesus. So you can see Jesus took his time to explain the parable of the sower as depicting 4 different types of believers. And the classification is based on each man's response to the message of hope. The first group are those who are superficial. They careless believers. They hear the message, but the message doesn't really touch their lives. Sits by the roadside. Churchgoers who are no more than bench warmers. They attend church services for the sake of just being part of the number in church. These are the people who see church as social gathering. They attend just because I can't sit at home. Let me just go. After all, they will see that I came to church. Social events. Now, such people attend church because for them it is a good thing to attend church. And of course, no one expects any commitment. Even many of the pastors of those churches, they don't care. And they don't expect any commitment from the members of their church. As long as, well, maybe I should modify that. The only commitment they expect is bring your tithes, bring your offerings. But they don't expect them to commit their lives, to make the effort to understand what the message of hope is all about. Now, these people, in the true sense of it, they are not believers. Honestly, they are not believers, although they go to church. So that's why we must be careful in calling anybody a believer. It's not everybody that goes to church that is a believer. The largest number, the largest group of people in church are not believers. Take it from me tonight. The second group are the unserious believers. These ones, they actually want to believe. They want to be believers. They want to, but they are not serious. They have some understanding, and truly they have some appreciation of the essence of the message, and somehow inside them they are aware of the need to apply themselves. What is their problem? They just could not bring themselves to make that effort beyond a point. So they do not grow spiritually. And that is why Jesus says the message did not take root in their hearts. So it withers easily. Now, these people do not profit from the message of God, especially due to challenges of life. They are not willing to make practical self-application. They did not make the effort to nurture the seed that they have already received. That is the problem. So, I've described two groups. If you didn't find yourself in group 1, what about group 2? Look at the group 3. These ones also are believers to some extent. In fact, if you are to rate the believers, group 1 are not believers. Group 2, maybe about 20% believe. They are believers of about 20% Keda. Group 3, maybe like 35-40%, maybe. Because these ones, they actually are believers who have been making some effort to grow, and they grow. They grow until they allow themselves to become distracted by the attractions of life. And I tell you tonight, such people sometimes, if not oftentimes, are distracted even by the church, the so-called church they are attending. The distractions can come in different ways. Some of these people, they are trying to make effort, and the pastor looks at some of them and say, this one has some money, let me give him a title. They now appoint somebody who does not have much understanding, is still struggling, suddenly make him a deacon, make him a pastor or whatever. And that becomes a problem. Because the man suddenly feels, yes, I'm now pastor. He thinks he has arrived, and that takes his mind off the target. So he misses the point. It happens. We have seen it over and over, and it is still happening. So many things can cause distraction, even in church, not to talk of outside church. A number of times, the preachings, the setting of the church, prosperity preaching, everybody must be a millionaire. If you are not a millionaire, it means you have not received God's favor. So they begin to run a race that they are not meant to run. Distraction. No wonder many so-called pastors end up being thieves. In fact, there was one that some years ago, one of these popular magazine, I think Newsweek or something, referred to as pastor of thieves. Because many of the pastors in that church were said to be thieves, stealing millions from their establishments and organizations. It is still happening today. So please, let's be careful. Now, for any believer to be able to sustain his or her spiritual growth, such a person needs to consciously remove the weeds from his life, from her life. What are the weeds? The weeds are those things that are competing for attention, that are competing with the growth, with your applying yourself, anything at all. Your wife, your husband, your children, your legitimate desires, they can become problematic for you. That is not me. That is Jesus talking. He said it. Now, if you fail to identify the challenges competing with your applying yourself, then these weeds, these thorns will eventually grow to choke up, to crowd out the seed growing inside you. And truly, my dear listeners, this is where many believers had fallen, and where many are still falling, and many will still fall. Many pastors are part of the problems, causing distractions to the people. Please identify your own challenge and be bold enough to do something about it. I was talking about the book of Romans a short while back, and of course, many of us, we know that that's where many of these pastors, they take their preachings from, always harping on some of those things. They give distorted messages. Message of prosperity above all else. Faith alone without works. That is now the theology. Please listen to me. Such preachings from these pastors cannot sustain anyone's faith on the path of true spiritual growth. It's unfortunate, but that is the truth. I have just about 6 more minutes, so let me quickly see if we can discuss the last group, the fourth and the last. This group are the genuine believers, 100% believers. They are diligently applying themselves. They nurture their faith. They consciously make the effort to do the works of righteousness. These people, they receive assistance, grace. Yes, they receive the special grace of God to assist them to walk the way. And that assistance comes from the Holy Spirit. This fourth group of believers, these are the ones who continually seek the grace because they desire to remain faithful and strong along the journey of life. Despite the many challenges, they grow deeper in the knowledge and in the love of God, and thus they exhibit varying levels of the fruits of the Spirit. And what are those levels? What are those different spirits? You can turn to Galatians 5, verse 22. Is described there. That says, when the Holy Spirit controls our lives, He will produce different kinds of fruits, such as love, joy, peace, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. My dear listeners, please ask yourself, where do you belong out of these four groups? The honest answer to this self-evaluation should help you to rededicate yourself to knowing more and walking better with God. How each person chooses to respond to this message that Christ is sending out to each of us is born after your state of awareness of what spiritual matters consist of. And of course, your desire, your readiness to attain spiritual growth is what will be your drive, your motive to grow. One cannot grow if one does not have interest, or if one does not have hunger for the things of God. No wonder Jesus says, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, there is a reward for them. Go back to the book of Matthew chapter 5. At this point, honestly, I want to bless God that He has given us. If Jesus tarries, we will continue the discussion next week, next Sunday. If there's anyone who has interest in discussing with me further, please feel free. From tomorrow morning, you can call 0808 204 4445. 0808 204 4445. Those of you who have been following me on Facebook, on YouTube, once again, I must apologize that even as I'm recording, I'm receiving messages that the network is so poor, is so unstable, and the recording is not smooth. No problem. Whatever is recorded, please